Welcome to our Meet the Artist series. My name is Sophie Wyatt. I'm joined today by Gaitrie Subryan, one of our wonderful teaching artists. Welcome, Gaitrie.
Hi, Sophie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Excited to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining.
Of course.
Um, so if you want to start by just introducing yourself and maybe speaking about your background and some sort of current projects that you might have ongoing or at the dance studio.
And so my name is Gaitrie Subryan, and I am a choreographer, performing artist, mom, yoga instructor, um, new passion of drawing. The list goes on and on. I'm an artist. I'm an artist in that whole umbrella of things. And I'm just, grateful for this opportunity to do what I do and to share my passion, my culture, a part of me with the community, with youth, with adults. It's never ending journey being an artist. And I think that's one of the most amazing things you can possibly have in this lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I know we often hear artists talk about sort of their art and their self. And I was wondering if maybe you could sort of speak to how you see that reflected in dance and Bollywood specifically. Like, how do you reflect yourself in dance?
That's a great question. It makes me think about like just how I share this part of me with like the community because it's a huge to me it's bigger than just like movement and just like dance, um, and it's essential for me to share who I am with the community and others. I grew up in the Bronx along like the Grand Concourse. If anybody's familiar with the Bronx, the Grand Concourse is like huge. And I loved it because there were so many like different people and different cultures around all the time. And my family was always around as well, extended family, immediate family. And we had music, we had movies, we had food that always like filled our apartment, right? But there was something still missing for me. There was still something missing for me. And I wanted to like know more about like where my great grandparents came from, right? We were born in Guyana, South America, which is like north of Brazil, right next to Venezuela, three small little countries up there. Guyana is one of them. But my great grandparents are actually from India, and in 1910, and I actually just found a lot of this information out. My sister is like huge into like, finding out about our background. She ended up finding this document from Ancestry.com that showed the date when they arrived in Guyana, which was 1910. And my great great grandfather worked at a sugar plantation for 5 years. And that was just really cool to like know. But they originally came from an area in India called Bihar. And like just to know that information kind of like makes me feel so good inside because this yearning that I have for Indian dance, for the culture, for the traditions, is not just through my upbringings. It's part of me. It's embedded in me. It's part of like my ancestors, and we carry those with us from generation to generation. And so, I wanted to know pretty much more about this. And it's been through dance that I've been able to tap into knowing more about like my roots and knowing about where I came from and the connection that I have to India. It's just much more. So for me, sharing a part of me connects me back to a part of my ancestors, a part of like where I'm originally from. And so like I urge others through dance, through yoga, through any form of artistic way to tap into that so they can connect themselves to their roots and where they come from, because I believe that most people have a very similar story compared like similar to mine.
Yeah, sort of like reaching back and developing that connection with like ancestors and old family. That's really wonderful. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Um, have you noticed any sort of change in how you practice or approach dance over time? And also, do you want to speak a little bit about Devi Bollywood, your studio, and how that sort of came into being?
Absolutely. So Davy Bollywood started 8 years ago, and actually, fun fact, we're shooting this on March. No, wait, where are we? March March 11th, right? Yesterday, March 10th, was the 8 year anniversary of me starting Davy Bollywood. It was an emotional day too. Like it was just filled with so many things happening. Other things that I can't really mention right now, but if you follow me, you'll be able to see them soon. Um, but it was an emotional day, and so 8 years ago, when I moved to Buffalo, I noticed that there wasn't like any dance classes, Indian dance classes being offered to the community. It was mostly being offered in the temple, like the Hindu temple,
Mhm.
and I really wanted to again connect with community, a larger community, a diverse community, um, and bring that to Buffalo. And so I hopped on a call with my artistic director from my previous company, the Sa Dance Company, and she was like, "Well, why don't you start your own?" And I'm like, "I know nothing about Buffalo. Like, even though I went to school here, I went to school here. It's very different when you start living in Buffalo."
Yeah.
And so I just took a leap. I took a leap of faith. I trusted. I had the guidance of, her along with my family, my spouse, and I just did it. And it's been one of the most fulfilling things that I think I can say that I've done in my time, because it really made me take a risk. It made me take a risk. It made me put myself out there, which is not the easiest to do when you're an artist.
Yeah.
um, but then it also helped me to connect with so many people, because it wasn't like I was at one studio and everyone came to me. I sought out studios and I sought out different like places where I could teach, to make connections and to build that network, and that was important, because nobody was looking for Bollywood at the time, and now I'll get like an email like, "Oh, I just saw this thing on like Big Bang. Let's just use Big Bang, but there's so many more like Mirror the Detective and things like that about Indian dance, and that they want to learn." So now that Indian dance is becoming more present in our lives right now, people are seeking it out more. But before, I really had to like go out there. So
What is it like being an entrepreneur?
it's um it's exciting to be an entrepreneur, to do the things that you want to do. It's honestly exciting. But you know what? Every day is also a new challenge. And when you're an entrepreneur, no day ever looks the same. No day ever looks the same. And it's exciting and scary, but it helps you to see how resilient you are,
Mhm.
how you can rise above challenges, how you can solve problems. And I pretty much became an entrepreneur to build something from nothing, because there was nothing here in Buffalo offering that to the community. And I believe that, every obstacle that I face along the way is just, you know, guiding me closer to my dreams of what I want to do. And, there's things that you're going to face. You're not going to be able to be all the things to all the people. You're not going to, um, you know, know everything, like the ins and outs, and that's okay. But the ability to want to learn every aspect of your business is what's important. And, the other main thing is like you have to know yourself in order to then know your business. It's like that whole tuning in thing, right? Like tune in and get to know who you are, and then that'll help you guide your business.
Mhm. Had you had any sort of experience starting your own business before you started the studio, or was it just sort of completely a first time experience for you?
I wouldn't say that it was a business. But when I was in New York City and I was, dancing there and working there and living there, I wanted to do something a little bit more. And I actually started teaching yoga classes for dancers. And it was just something on my own. And it was all like friends that came that I would dance with and that, we would perform together. But that was kind of like the onset of things, because then I knew I had this ability to bring people together,
Hmm.
to network, to build a community, because I had that little taste of it. And in New York, I don't think I would have ever started dance classes because there's so many out there. There's so many out there, and I was already part of two, one with the dance school that I was training with, and then one with the dance company that I was performing with as a company member. There was also no time, but for yoga, I was able to like carve out a little bit of time and start teaching in that capacity. So when I came to Buffalo, it was scary because I knew no one, but at the same time I still had like this taste of it, and I knew what I could possibly do. And so that's why my artistic director said just do it, because she knew the passion I had.
I wanted to ask you about is your podcast. I know podcasts have become hugely popular. And sort of what inspired you to create a podcast? What are sort of the things that you discuss? And also, where can people listen and find your podcast?
Sure, absolutely. So the podcast Beyond the Studio, of course, came into fruition because of COVID and the lockdown and not being able to create much. But to be honest, it's been on my mind for some time. Just with all the different projects that I've done or have, wanted to create, there was just no time to really carve out to do this. And so it took some time. It wasn't like right at the beginning of COVID that I actually created this. It wasn't until October of 2020 that I finally like kicked it off, because one of my friends, she had stage 3 breast cancer, and she wanted to share her story. She's also a dancer. She's a flamenco dancer. She also does hip hop, and she wanted to share her story. So other people could, listen and take better care of their bodies, because even as dancers, we know so much about bodies, right? But when it comes down to it, we don't always pay attention to every little thing. So she wanted to inspire others with her story, and she didn't really have a way to put it out there. And so, well, I was like, I'm kind of playing with an idea. I have nothing. Like, I literally had nothing planned to kick off a podcast. No title, no like follow up interviews, nothing. And so, and even like a target audience, I was like, who am I going to share this with? Kind of idea. So I was like, let's just do it, and whatever happens, happens. So I trusted the process. That's a key thing right now for me, is to just trust the process and not force anything. And so after we completed her interview and I started the post editing stuff, kind of post production aspect of it, with listening to her story, kind of gathering like materials from her, photos, bios, and start to kind of really bring it in and narrow things down of where it was going to go. I started asking the questions, well, who is this going to be geared towards? Who's my next interview? Because you kind of have to now have the lineup going. And what's my mission? What's my purpose for doing this? And when I started asking those questions to myself, they started coming. And when I say they started coming, it was like literally a ton of bricks started hitting me, like boom, 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 you got this. It's going to be okay. And Beyond the Studio, I was like, well, I don't want it just to be dancer focused, because that's not who I'm trying to aim for. I'm trying to gather stories from all artists, because all artists have stories that they can share to inspire and influence others. And so Beyond the Studio literally means beyond, whether it's like a dance studio, whether it's like a photography studio, whatever it may be. And the target was, to just captivate audiences just as we would on stage, just as we would in an exhibit, or a gallery showing, whatever it may be, or a musical performance. So for me, that's where I aimed for. And then I started making a list. Who am I going to interview? Who am I going to interview? All my friends, because all my friends are artists. So I have like I think till the end of April pretty much booked out, which is nice to have at least like all of my friends who I can share their stories, and then it connects me closer to them,
Hmm.
right? Because there's so much about our friends that we don't know, especially when they're going through struggles and hardships and difficulties. But being able to tap into it and to hear their story and provide them a platform where they can speak, openly, comfortably, freely.
Well, thank you so much for being part of Meet the Artist. And thank you so much for sort of continuing to share your art forms and your talents with Buffalo and Western New York. Yeah,
Thank you so much for having me. This is truly exciting to be part of, and I'm really grateful for all that Young Audiences does, for all the lives that you are able to enrich, and the youth that we're able to connect with. It means so much to have this. So thank
thank
you.
you.
Celebration. Hopefully, when all this wonderful stuff that we're dealing with is over.